11 July 16-24. 1969 was the American spaceflight that first landed humans on the moon. Commander Neil Armstrong and Lunar module pilot Buzz Aldrin landed the Apollo Lunar Module Eagle on July 20, 1969, at 2017 UTC, and Armstrong became the first person to step onto the moon's surface 6 hours and 39 minutes later. On July 21st at 2:56 UTC, Aldrin joined him 19 minutes later, and they spent about 2¼ hours together exploring the site they had named Tranquility Base upon landing. Armstrong and Aldrin collected 47.5 pounds 21.5 kilograms of lunar material to bring back to Earth as pilot Michael Collins flew the command module Columbia in lunar orbit, and were on the moon's surface for 21 hours, 36 minutes before lifting off to rejoin Columbia. Apollo 11 was launched by a Saturn V rocket from Kennedy Space Center on Merritt Island, Florida, on July 16 at 13:32 UTC, and it was the fifth crewed mission of NASA's Apollo program. The Apollo spacecraft had 3 parts: a command module CM with a cabin for the 3 astronauts, the only part that returned to Earth; a service module SM, which supported the command module with propulsion, electrical power, oxygen, and water; and a lunar module LM that had 2 stages: a descent stage for landing on the moon and an ascent stage to place the astronauts back into lunar orbit. After being sent to the moon by the Saturn V's 3rd stage, the astronauts separated the spacecraft from it and traveled for 3 days until they entered lunar orbit. Armstrong and Aldrin then moved into Eagle and landed in a Sea of Tranquility on July 20. The astronauts used Eagle's ascent stage to lift off from the lunar surface and rejoin Collins in the command module. They jettisoned Eagle before they performed the maneuvers that propelled Columbia out of the last of its 30 lunar orbits onto a trajectory back to Earth. They returned to Earth and splashed down in the Pacific Ocean on July 24th after more than 8 days in space. Armstrong's first step onto the lunar surface was broadcast on live TV to a worldwide audience. He described the event as one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. Apollo 11 effectively proved US victory in the space race to demonstrate spaceflight superiority by fulfilling a national goal proposed in 1961 by President John F. Kennedy, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, the United States was engaged in the Cold War, a geopolitical rivalry with the Soviet Union. On October 4, 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite. This surprise success fired fears and imaginations around the world. It demonstrated that the Soviet Union had the capability to deliver nuclear weapons over intercontinental distances and challenged American claims of military, economic, and technological superiority. This precipitated the Sputnik crisis and triggered the space race to prove which superpower would achieve superior spaceflight capability. President Dwight D. Eisenhower responded to the Sputnik challenge by creating the National Aeronautics and Space Administration (NASA) and initiating Project Mercury, which aimed to launch a man into Earth orbit. Since the Soviet Union had higher lift capacity launch vehicles, Kennedy chose, from among options presented by NASA, challenge beyond the capacity of the existing generation of rocketry, so that the US and Soviet Union would be starting from a position of equality. A crewed mission to the moon would serve this purpose.